Chapter 10: Reincarnation, the Masks of Many Lives. 10.1 Rebirth as a Mechanism for Growth. Reincarnation is not a punishment, nor is it a cycle of endless wandering without purpose. Within the framework developed in this book, it is best understood as one expression of a far broader principle, the continuity of consciousness through form. Rebirth is not imposed upon the soul, nor does it function as a moral ledger or karmic accounting system. It is, rather, a sacred opportunity, an invitation for the soul to experience life through many masks, in many roles, and from countless perspectives. As discussed earlier, the soul itself is not bound by the constraints that govern incarnated life. Time, space, and linear sequence are properties of embodiment, not of consciousness at its source. The soul does not move through time as we do, nor does it occupy a single location. Instead, it expresses itself through slivers of awareness, focused points of attention that enter environments where limitation makes experience possible. These slivers are not deployed sequentially in the way a human biography unfolds from birth to death. They may arise across different historical periods, cultures, and, according to many philosophical and spiritual traditions, entirely different worlds or dimensions of experience. From this vantage, what we call reincarnation is not the soul returning in the ordinary sense, but the continuation of a much larger pattern of participation within physical reality. Earth is not the exclusive classroom of the soul, nor is human embodiment its only curriculum. It is one particular learning environment, sometimes described as a schoolroom, characterized by emotional intensity, moral choice, relational complexity, and the deep illusion of separation that physical form makes possible. For clarity and consistency, this book adopts a specific convention of language. When we speak of the reincarnated self, we are referring exclusively to repeated incarnations within the human schoolroom of Earth. This is not meant to imply that the soul's activity is limited to Earth, nor that reincarnation is the sole or primary mode of consciousness exploration. It is simply a practical boundary for discussion, allowing us to examine human growth, love, fear, and unity within a shared experiential frame. Within that frame, reincarnation serves a distinct function. A single lifetime, no matter how rich, offers only a narrow slice of the human condition. Repeated embodiment allows consciousness to encounter itself under widely varied conditions: strength and vulnerability, power and dependence, certainty and doubt, privilege and hardship. Each life presents a different curriculum, not graded, not ranked, and not judged, but experienced. The soul is not interested in comfort. It is interested in awareness. It seeks not ease, but understanding, and understanding rarely arises without contrast. This does not mean that suffering is required or sought for its own sake. It means that limitation, when it arises, as it inevitably does in any finite form, can become material for the cultivation of empathy and the loosening of separation. From the perspective of the incarnated self, pain feels personal, unfair, and often arbitrary. From the broader perspective of the soul, it is information, never dismissed, never trivialized, but also never final. Seen in this light, reincarnation is neither a closed loop nor a cosmic obligation. It is not a hierarchy of advancement or a test one must pass. It is simply one way consciousness learns through form, one avenue through which love, compassion, forgiveness, and wisdom are slowly embodied rather than merely understood. Reincarnation, as it appears in this book, is therefore not a doctrine to be believed, but a possibility to be considered. Its value lies less in what it explains about the past than in how it reshapes our posture in the present, toward ourselves, toward others, and toward the shared work of becoming more whole. 10.2 Reincarnation across wisdom traditions. The intuition that life extends beyond a single incarnation is not a modern invention, nor is it confined to any one culture. It appears in varied forms across civilizations separated by geography, language, and time. In the Indian traditions, reincarnation is articulated through samsara, the ongoing cycle of birth and death through which consciousness refines its understanding. While later interpretations emphasized karmic accounting, earlier formulations focused more simply on continuity, the idea that life unfolds as a series of embodied experiences shaped by intention and awareness. Buddhism preserved this continuity while removing the notion of a permanent personal self. Rebirth occurs, but not as an ego traveling intact from body to body. Instead, patterns of consciousness, habits of perception, attachment, and intention continue, much like a flame lighting another flame, without remaining numerically the same. In ancient Greece, Plato spoke of the soul's pre-existence and return, suggesting that embodiment involves a kind of forgetting, and that wisdom is, in part, a remembering. The soul descends into form, takes on limitation, and later reascends through insight and recognition. Pythagorean traditions went further, explicitly teaching transmigration as a means of purification, not from sin, but from ignorance. Gnostic Christianity, operating largely beneath the surface of early orthodoxy, framed embodiment as a descent into density and fragmentation. Some texts suggest that souls return repeatedly until they awaken from identification with appearances and remember their origin beyond the material world. While these ideas were later deemed heretical, their persistence across centuries hints at an intuition that could not be fully erased. Judaism, too, contains quieter strands of reincarnation, particularly within Kabbalistic teachings, where gilgul describes the return of souls to complete unfinished work. Indigenous traditions around the world often speak less in doctrinal terms, but describe cycles of return, ancestral continuity, and the porousness of time where past and future interweave through living consciousness. What unites these traditions is not agreement on mechanism or metaphysics, but a shared sense that consciousness is not exhausted by a single lifetime, and that existence unfolds through cycles rather than linear finality. 10.3. Contemporary Belief and Cultural Intuition. Despite formal doctrine, belief in reincarnation has quietly permeated modern Western culture. Surveys conducted by the Pew Research Center consistently show that a significant minority of Americans, including a notable portion of self-identified Christians, affirm belief in some form of rebirth or past life continuity. While exact numbers fluctuate by survey and framing, roughly a quarter of American Christians report holding views that diverge from traditional one-life theology. This suggests that reincarnation functions less as an imported belief and more as an intuitive reconciliation, a way people resolve tensions between justice, suffering, moral development, and the apparent arbitrariness of circumstance. For many, the idea of a single lifetime followed by eternal reward or punishment simply fails to account for the uneven distribution of opportunity, trauma, and capacity observed in human life. Reincarnation offers a different lens, not one that explains everything, but one that restores coherence without requiring moral absolutism or divine favoritism. 10.4. Empirical Glimpses, Memory Without Biography. While reincarnation cannot be tested in controlled laboratory conditions, it has been examined systematically through careful field research. Over several decades, thousands of spontaneous reports, primarily from young children, have been documented, investigated, and archived using consistent methodological criteria. These cases do not rely on trance states, hypnosis, or leading suggestion. Instead, they arise unprompted, often before a child has acquired a fully developed personal identity. The most extensive body of this research was initiated by Ian Stevenson, who spent more than 40 years collecting and analyzing reports from around the world. By the time of his death, Stevenson and his collaborators had documented over 2,500 cases across multiple cultures. Of these, a substantial subset, several hundred, were investigated in depth, meaning that names, locations, family structures, occupations, and circumstances described by the child were compared against historical records or living witnesses. Importantly, Stevenson applied exclusionary filters. Cases involving hypnosis, obvious coaching, strong parental prompting, or vague, non-specific claims were typically set aside. His focus remained on instances where a child's statements could be independently checked and where normal information transfer appeared implausible. In many of the most studied cases, children spoke of previous lives they had no evident means of learning about, sometimes in geographically distant or socially disconnected regions. This work was later continued and refined by Jim B. Tucker, who expanded the research into Western contexts where belief in reincarnation is not culturally reinforced. Tucker's contribution is significant because it addresses a common criticism, that such memories are merely products of expectation in cultures where rebirth is assumed. Yet, similar cases emerged in the United States and Europe, often to the confusion or discomfort of parents who held no such beliefs. Across these databases, patterns recur with striking consistency. Most children who report past life memories begin doing so between the ages of 2 and 5. The memories are often emotionally charged rather than abstract, focusing on relationships, unresolved conflicts, or the circumstances of death. As the child grows older, typically between ages 6 and 8, the memories fade, coinciding with the consolidation of a stable personal identity and social role. This fading is not forced. It appears to occur naturally as attention narrows and the present life narrative takes precedence. In a smaller but notable number of cases, physical correspondences were observed. Some children were born with birthmarks or congenital anomalies that appeared to match wounds or injuries described in the alleged previous life, sometimes corresponding to medical or forensic records. While such correlations do not establish causation, they complicate purely psychological explanations. None of this constitutes proof in the strict scientific sense. These researchers themselves were careful to state that their findings were suggestive, not conclusive. Alternative explanations, unknown information transfer, coincidence, confabulation, cannot be entirely ruled out. And yet, taken together, the volume, consistency, and methodological restraint of these cases challenge the assumption that consciousness and memory are strictly confined to a single biological lifespan. From the perspective developed in this book, these cases are best understood not as evidence that personalities migrate intact from body to body, but as glimpses of continuity prior to full identification with the present incarnated self. They align with the idea of a gradually thickening veil, one that allows traces of broader awareness to surface briefly before the demands of embodiment require narrowing, focus, and forgetting. Whether one interprets these cases literally or symbolically, they raise a quiet but persistent question. If identity is as fixed and self-contained as we assume, why does it sometimes arrive already carrying fragments of another story? It is important to distinguish the cases discussed here from hypnotic past life regression therapy, which occupies a very different category. Hypnotic regression relies on altered states induced in adults, often guided by a therapist's questions, imagery, or expectations. While such experiences can be psychologically meaningful and emotionally impactful, they are also highly susceptible to suggestion, confabulation, and the imaginative reconstruction of memory. For this reason, regression narratives are generally considered unreliable as historical evidence, even by clinicians who value their therapeutic effects. A necessary distinction: spontaneous memory versus hypnotic regression. The cases investigated by Stevenson, Tucker, and their colleagues were selected precisely to avoid these confounds. They involved spontaneous, untrained recollections, almost always emerging in early childhood without prompting, hypnosis, or prior belief in reincarnation. The researchers did not ask children to remember past lives. Rather, they documented what children reported on their own, often to the surprise or discomfort of their families. This methodological distinction is critical. Hypnotic regression begins with an expectation and attempts to elicit content. Spontaneous cases begin with content and only later invite investigation. In the former, narrative is constructed within a suggestible state. In the latter, narrative appears prior to any formal inquiry and is evaluated against external records. For the purposes of this book, hypnotic regression is neither endorsed nor required. The interest lies not in vivid inner experiences produced under guidance, but in naturally occurring phenomena that resist easy psychological explanation. Whether or not one accepts reincarnation as the correct interpretation, these spontaneous cases present a qualitatively different kind of data, one that raises questions about memory, identity, and the boundaries of individual consciousness without relying on altered states or therapeutic framing. 10.5. The Veil, the Infant Mind, and the Narrowing of Identity. Infancy offers another subtle clue. Newborns arrive without a fixed narrative self, without a stable sense of separation, and often with an uncanny attunement to emotional and relational fields. Developmental psychology describes this as immaturity. From another perspective, it may reflect proximity to a less individuated state of awareness. As language, memory, and social roles solidify, identity narrows. The incarnated self learns its name, its story, its boundaries. This narrowing is necessary for functioning in the world, but it also obscures any broader continuity that may exist beyond the present life. Whether or not one accepts reincarnation literally, the pattern is clear. Identity is constructed, layered, and eventually mistaken for essence. Reincarnation, understood symbolically or literally, invites us to loosen that mistake. 10.6. Compassion through continuity. Perhaps the most important contribution of reincarnation to a spiritual worldview is not explanatory, but ethical. When life is seen as continuous rather than terminal, judgment softens. When identity is understood as provisional rather than absolute, compassion becomes more natural. How easily we condemn when we believe this is all there is. How differently we listen when we allow that every person before us may be engaged in a long, complex journey we cannot see. Reincarnation reframes moral failure not as final corruption, but as incomplete learning. It invites patience without passivity, accountability without condemnation. Even if reincarnation were ultimately proven false, the posture it encourages, humility, empathy, and restraint in judgment, would remain profoundly beneficial. And if it is true, even in part, then every encounter carries far greater weight than we imagine. Each person becomes not merely a stranger or obstacle, but another mask through which consciousness is discovering itself. In this light, love and unity cease to be abstract ideals. They become practical necessities, skills learned over time, across experience, through repetition and forgetting and remembering again. Reincarnation, then, need not be believed. It need only be considered. And in that consideration, something subtle but transformative begins to shift. How we see others, how we see ourselves, and how seriously we take the opportunity of being here at all.